This is not a story about crime happening in the shadows. This is a story about crime happening inside the system, where stop wearing a badge, carrying federal credentials, and signing off on operations designed to protect the very women it was destroying. At 11:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, during what was supposed to be a routine federal budget review meeting in Washington, D.C., FBI Director of Special Operations issued a single classified authorization code. 4 words followed that code in the internal memo: Operation Iron Veil. Active. What happened in the next 72 hours would dismantle one of the most sophisticated human trafficking networks ever documented on American soil. 50 women rescued, 40 predators charged, and at the center of it all, a man who had spent 19 years inside the federal law enforcement system, a man whose name appeared on anti-trafficking task force commendations, a man who had shaken hands with senators and smiled for cameras at human rights conferences. His name for this story is Special Agent Director Raymond Voss. And he was MS-13's most powerful asset in the United States of America. Before we show you how deep this goes, or understand one thing: the number 50 does not capture the full horror. Those 50 women were the ones they found alive. It is 3:18 a.m. in the South Bronx, New York. The streets are slick with February rain. Steam rises from grates in the pavement. A bodega on the corner has its lights on, but nobody is buying groceries at this hour. 3 blocks east, behind a commercial laundry facility that processed linens for mid-range Manhattan hotels, a steel door is the only thing between the outside world and what federal agents are about to find. FBI tactical units, flanked by ICE Homeland Security investigations teams and a DHS Rapid Response Division, approach from 4 directions simultaneously. No lights, no sirens, black vehicles rolling slow and quiet like a tide coming in. 31 agents on this single location, and this is just one of 11 targets going live across New York, Texas, and Florida in the same 60-minute window. The breach takes 4 seconds. Flashbangs detonate in the corridor. Agents in black move through smoke and disorientation with the calm precision of people who have run this entry 100 times in simulation. Inside, they find a processing operation. Not drugs, not weapons, but women. 12 of them. Ranging in age from 17 to 31, confined in a converted storage space behind a false wall accessed through a panel disguised as a utility breaker box. There are mattresses on the floor. There are locks on the outside of every door. There are phones with no SIM cards, just preloaded scripts telling the women what to say if anyone official ever asked. The agents do not speak loudly. They do not rush. One female ICE investigator kneels on the cold concrete floor and speaks quietly to a woman in the corner who has not looked up since the door came off its hinges. It takes 4 minutes before the woman raises her eyes. What the investigator sees there will stay with her for the rest of her career. Across the building, other agents are moving through a back office. 2 men attempt to exit through a roof access hatch, carrying duffel bags. They make it 6 feet onto the roof before SWAT containment units already positioned above meet them with a force they were not prepared for. The duffel bags contain $200,000 in cash, 3 burner phones, and a sealed waterproof envelope. Inside that envelope, a laminated access card for a federal facility in Arlington, Virginia, and a name written in marker on the back in handwriting that does not belong to either man on that roof. The name is Raymond Voss. It is now 4:51 a.m. in Houston, Texas. A storage and logistics warehouse operating under the registered name Coastal Premier Freight Solutions sits beside a rail yard on the western edge of the city. On paper, it moves industrial equipment parts. On paper, it employs 43 workers across 2 shifts. On paper, it has been inspected twice in the past 3 years and passed both times. Because the inspector on both visits was on a list that investigators would not find until much later. ICE strike teams and FBI agents hit the Houston site with the same coordinated precision as New York. Here the numbers are worse. 18 women. 2 of them have medical injuries that require immediate ambulance transport. There's a scheduling system on a laptop near the main office desk, color-coded, organized by city, by client tier, by availability. It reads like a corporate calendar. It is the single most disturbing document any agent on the Houston team has ever seen in their professional life, and several of them have spent decades in federal law enforcement. Simultaneously, 240 miles south, federal units close in on a waterfront property outside Corpus Christi. A private residence registered to a shell company called Blue Horizon Coastal Properties LLC. One of 17 shell entities that investigators would eventually trace back through layers of misdirection to a single controlling interest. A DEA surveillance unit had been watching this property for 11 days before tonight. They had logged vehicle patterns, counted arrivals and departures, documented the rotation of what appeared to be private security personnel who were not registered with any licensed contractor in the state of Texas. The Corpus Christi raid nets 9 more women, 23 kilograms of narcotics used for control and compliance. 4 MS-13 affiliated enforcers. And something that makes the senior agent on scene call Washington immediately. A server rack, operational, encrypted, running a communication protocol that FBI cyber analysts will later identify as the same architecture used in a known MS-13 command structure originating from Central America. This is not a local operation. This is a node in a continental network, and someone gave MS-13 the technical infrastructure to run it inside the United States. By 6:30 a.m., the Florida phase is already underway. Miami's waterfront district never fully sleeps, and the pre-dawn hour on Biscayne Bay carries that specific energy. The last of the nightlife dissolving into the first gray light over the water, the smell of salt and exhaust, music still audible from somewhere 3 blocks over. A luxury short-term rental property operating through a hospitality management company called Prestige Urban Stays is quiet on the outside. It has been quiet and discreet and entirely invisible to the surrounding neighborhood for 2 years. That invisibility was not accidental. It was purchased. FBI agents enter from the ground floor and 2 upper balconies simultaneously. 11 women are recovered here. One of them, when shown a photograph of Raymond Voss, does not look away. She has seen that face before. Not in this building, but at a property in Fort Lauderdale 8 months earlier. She remembers the visit because he was introduced to her by a name that meant something to her at the time. A name that suggested authority, protection, official sanction. She had believed briefly that he was there to help her. He was there to inspect the operation. That same morning, in a secure FBI cyber forensics facility in Quantico, Virginia, a team of 12 analysts has been running parallel to every physical raid through the night. When the server from Corpus Christi comes online in their environment, the picture that emerges over the next 4 hours is not a surprise. It is a confirmation of the worst version of the theory they had been building for 14 months. The operation has an internal code name used by its architects, Project Meridian. Project Meridian is not a trafficking ring in the traditional sense. It is a franchise model. MS-13's upper command structure had identified the need for a stable, federally protected corridor through which they could operate long-term human trafficking and narcotics distribution without the constant attrition that comes from law enforcement pressure. The solution they found was not to outrun federal law enforcement. The solution was to buy a piece of it and redirect it. Raymond Voss had been recruited not through blackmail or coercion, but through ideology and greed in equal measure. He believed, according to communications recovered from his encrypted personal accounts, that the federal system was structurally incapable of addressing organized crime at scale. He had watched prosecutions collapse for 2 decades. He had seen informants burned, cases buried, political priorities override investigative momentum. At some point, but the analysts cannot pinpoint exactly when, he stopped fighting the system's failures and decided to profit from them. He used his position to accomplish 3 things. First, he redirected surveillance assets away from MS-13 affiliated properties in all 3 target states during key operational windows. Patrol grids were quietly adjusted. Aerial surveillance requests were delayed in processing. 3 separate multi-agency tip submissions involving Coastal Premier Freight Solutions in Houston were administratively deprioritized, not rejected, not dismissed, just moved down the queue until they were no longer timely. Second, he used his authorization level to issue what appeared to be legitimate interagency coordination requests that effectively created blind spots in federal monitoring coverage timed to coincide with MS-13 trafficking transport schedules. Third, and this is the line that makes every investigator in the room go silent when they read it. He used a federal victim assistance grant program designed to help trafficking survivors as a financial laundering vehicle. The sham charity, registered under the name Hope Anchor Foundation, processed over $4.2 million in disguised transactions over 26 months. He was not just protecting the network. He was funding its expansion using money earmarked for its victims. This is not corruption. This is command-level collusion. But this is engineered betrayal of the highest order, and it ran undetected for over 2 years. because the man running it knew exactly where the investigators would look and made sure there was nothing to find when they looked there. The arrest of Raymond Voss occurs at 9:14 a.m. at a private residence in Alexandria, Virginia. He is not in hiding. He's at his kitchen table with a coffee cup and an open laptop when 4 FBI agents deliberately chosen from field offices with no prior overlap with his professional network, knock and enter on federal warrant. He does not run. He does not speak. He looks at the lead agent for a long moment with an expression that investigators present in the room later describe not as guilt, not as fear, but as calculation. He's already thinking about leverage. He is already thinking about what he knows and who else it touches. 40 individuals in total face federal charges across the 3 states by end of day. The charges include human trafficking conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, money laundering, obstruction of federal investigation, and in Voss's case specifically, abuse of federal authority and conspiracy to commit trafficking under color of law. MS-13 command affiliates captured in Houston and Corpus Christi face additional charges tied to narcotics distribution, given the fentanyl and methamphetamine recovered at the Texas sites. 6 spaces were free materials used not for street sale, but as instruments of coercion and control over the women held in the network's properties. 50 women are now in federal protective custody across secure locations in all 3 states. Each of them will need medical attention. Each of them will need legal support. Each of them will need years of things that no arrest, no press conference, and no charge sheet can provide. The operation that rescued them took 14 months of work and 1 night of coordinated action. What comes next for each of those 50 women will take far longer and demand far more. There are honest people inside federal law enforcement who are not sleeping tonight. Not from the adrenaline of the operation, but from the weight of what the files showed. Officers who filed clean reports and ran clean patrol grids and never understood why their work kept producing dead ends. They were not failures. They were working inside a system that had been quietly rewired above them by a man who had their trust and burned it for profit and ideology. Those officers will carry that knowledge for a long time. The institution those officers serve will need to be rebuilt with that knowledge as its foundation. Rebuilt harder, with less faith in rank and more faith in transparency. Because what Raymond Voss understood, what MS-13 understood when they recruited him, is that power does not always need violence to sustain itself. Sometimes it only needs silence and ambition and one person in the right position who has decided that the rules no longer apply to them. The most dangerous threat to law enforcement is not always at the door with a weapon. Sometimes it is already inside, wearing the right credentials, speaking the right language, attending the right meetings. The women in that South Bronx laundry building did not end up there because the system failed by accident. They ended up there because the system was directed to look away by someone whose salary was paid by the American taxpayer to protect them. That's the story. That is what 50 women and 40 arrests and 1 federal agent in handcuffs in Alexandria, Virginia actually means when you trace it all the way back to its origin. Project Meridian is dismantled. The network nodes are dark. MS-13's U.S. trafficking corridor in these 3 states is broken, but the final file on Voss's encrypted drive, the one that agents flagged and forwarded to senior FBI oversight before anything else, contains correspondence suggesting that Project Meridian was not a standalone design. It was a pilot, a model intended to be replicated. The investigation into where else it may have already been replicated has just begun. If you are still watching this, tap like so more people see this story. These 50 women deserve to have their rescue witnessed by as many people as possible. Comment Iron Veil below. If you believe that accountability inside federal institutions is not optional, it is essential.